It's time to sum up Rhoda's updated version of Pascal's wager. His argument goes like this. If Christianity has at least a 50% chance of being true, then it is rational to commit to living a Christian life. Christianity has at least a 50% chance of being true, so it is rational to commit to living a Christian life. This is a logically valid argument, so the conclusion must be true if the premises are true. Rhoda argued for the truth of premise 1 using decision theory. He did this in 2 basic steps. Step 1 was to create a decision matrix, and step 2 was to determine which strategy is most dominant. Rhoda's decision matrix contrasts Christianity with alternative worldviews, beginning with naturalism. If you commit to living a Christian life and Christianity is true, then you've maximized your chance at eternal life, and you're more likely to help others find eternal life. We called this outcome WC for wager and Christianity is true. If you commit to living a Christian life and naturalism is true, then you've lost certain temporary pleasures and perhaps sacrificed some relationships. But you've still maximized your chance at a happier, more satisfying and longer life, while also being more charitable and sacrificial with your time and money. We called this outcome WN for wager and naturalism is true. If you don't commit and Christianity is true, then you've decreased your chance at eternal life. You'll also be less likely to help others find eternal life. We called this outcome not WC for don't wager and Christianity is true. If you don't commit and naturalism is true, then you've gained certain temporary pleasures and relationships, but you've lowered your chance at a happier, more satisfying, and longer life. You'd also be less likely to volunteer and give time and money sacrificially. We called this outcome not WN for don't wager and naturalism is true. Rhoda then identified the most dominant strategy as commitment. Why? Well, commitment is far better than non-commitment if Christianity is true. And commitment is either better than, equal to, or only slightly worse than non-commitment if naturalism is true. That means if you commit, there's a lot to gain and not much to lose, making commitment the most dominant strategy. Now, you could be rational not to commit in this case if you thought that the chance of Christianity being true was really low and the chance of naturalism being true was really high. But as long as the odds are about 50-50, commitment to living a Christian life is the most dominant strategy in this case. But what about other worldviews? Well, you can swap those in for naturalism and follow the same steps. If you put in a worldview similar to Christianity in its rewards and consequences, like Islam, for example, then the comparison of costs and benefits of each outcome will pretty much cancel each other out. And the most dominant strategy then will be based on the likelihoods. So in that kind of case, you should commit to the religion that seems most likely to be true. And this is where evidence from natural theology and history comes in. So that's the rationale for Rhoda's first premise. Now, maybe you have some objections to this first premise. I did an entire video responding to objections, so I'm just going to encourage you to check that out. But what about Rhoda's second premise? Is it true? He considers several lines of evidence and counter-evidence. First, he argued that a necessary being exists and was involved in the production of our universe. His argument was that the entire group of contingent beings that have ever existed, call it Group C, has a causal explanation. And that explanation can't be a member of Group C because Group C would then be self-caused. So it must be a being outside that group. But if it's outside the group of all contingent beings, then it must be a necessary being. Rhoda then offered a fine-tuning argument to show that this necessary being is intelligent. But if it's intelligent, then it has a mind, making it a personal necessary being. This fine-tuning argument used Bayes' theorem to show that the probability of a life-permitting universe, or multiverse for that matter, is greater on theism than on naturalism. Next, Rhoda provided 2 arguments to think that this personal necessary being is the God of Christianity. The first was that Christianity possesses a ring of truth in its moral beauty and existential resonance. The second was that the resurrection of Jesus best explains a minimal set of historical facts, and Jesus' resurrection provides strong evidence for the truth of Christianity. Last, Rhoda considers some counter-evidence, appealing to the problem of evil and divine hiddenness. He responded to this counter-evidence with an expanded free will defense that would lead one to expect vast amounts of suffering and potentially gratuitous evils in order to preserve human freedom, reveal our need to be rescued, and provide us the opportunity to grow morally and spiritually so we have closer union with God. Rhoda thinks that after weighing the positive and negative evidence, Christianity has at least a 50% chance of being true. And that's the rationale for the truth of Rhoda's second premise. So, what do you think? Are both premises true? If yes, then it's not only rationally permissive, but rationally required of you to live a deeply Christian life. You should begin praying and reading the Bible and attending church. But if your answer is no, which premise is false and why? This is where your investigation begins. Wrestle with the argument for yourself, but just try to do it fairly, whether you're an atheist or a theist. That means you need to do two major things. First, try to control for your biases. Watch out for confirmation bias. If, for example, you're already convinced that theism or Christianity is false, you should be extra careful not to simply dismiss evidence for them. Be critical of your knee-jerk reactions and talk about the arguments with other people, especially people you disagree with. Second, employ the principle of charity. This will involve interpreting the arguments in the most favorable way that seems reasonable. And when you identify a problem with an argument, exploring whether there's a way to patch up the problem. Well, that concludes this series on Dr. Michael Rhoda's book, Taking Pascal's Wager. If you enjoyed it, please let me know in the comments, give the video a like, and subscribe to the channel. If you want more, check out my interview with Dr. Michael Rhoda. And for a different, updated version of Pascal's Wager, check out my interview with Dr. Liz Jackson. Her work on the topic is really interesting and compelling in my opinion. Thanks, and see you soon.